Well, listening to all of that and joining us right now is Toby Young. He's director of the Free Speech Union. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Julia.
Thanks for joining us. Now, we spoke to you last week about the situation with Allison Pearson, having just spoken to her on the show, and there's been a lot of developments in that case since. She says she was told it was a non-crime hate incident, but wasn't told what the tweet is. The police then have said, well, actually, no, it's actually a possible criminal incident, and it involves a tweet from a year ago, and they've revealed what the tweet is, and it's something she kind of tweeted and then deleted, having realised she'd made a mistake, thinking that it was a picture of police sort of standing, having a cosy, happy, smiley photo with pro-Palestinian march protesters, as opposed to actually it was people holding up a Pakistani flag, and it was from a completely different event, completely different place and different cause. She's been accused, though, of inciting racial hatred, which is actually a crime. What do you make of this case and the other ones that have all emerged? And it's not just Julie Bindel, it's many others as well. How much of a threat to our freedom of speech is this?
I think it is quite a significant threat to our freedom of speech. It's inevitable, people watching what's happened to Allison for tweeting something that I wouldn't have thought most people would regard as stirring up racial hatred. Not something that anyone, I think, would be concerned might meet the threshold for a criminal prosecution. And by the way, the maximum sentence, if you're found guilty of intentionally stirring up racial hatred, is 7 years. Yeah. I think many people seeing how seriously the police took a report seemingly from a woke activist resident in Brighton, a white male. Yeah. Taking offence on behalf of the people he thought Allison had stirred up racial hatred against.
But making the complaint, we assume, in recent weeks about a tweet that was posted a year ago that was deleted within hours when it was pointed out to Allison. My guess is, I'm a middle-aged woman too, my guess is she's on her phone, she sees a picture of the police. There's a big debate at the time about police not taking action to protect people from anti-Semitic violence and threats and placards and the like, some of these pro-Palestinian marches. She sees a picture, someone has said, oh, it's outrageous, here they are cozying up. She sees it, she makes a comment about police. Again, I'm quoting her words, the original tweet, about, cozying up, I think, with the phrase, the Jew haters, people who were anti-Semitic was her view. She deleted it when it was pointed out to her, these were people, nothing to do. But the argument is, oh, well, she saw some people with brown skin and therefore assumed something. But that wasn't the... She thought it had already been identified as people, and I can completely understand why she was mistaken on that. I'm not sure I would necessarily have used the same language. But again, it is extraordinary that people can walk on the streets of our capital city every 2 weeks with some of the most extraordinary placards and chants, and they don't face arrest. But a tweet that was up for a couple of hours, which was clearly a mistake, and she deleted it when it was a mistake, which doesn't actually contain any hatred of any particular racial group, should be investigated a year later. I mean, it is, as she said at the time, Kafkaesque, isn't it?
It is Kafkaesque. I think what may have prompted her to post that tweet is that last year, Allison and I and some other people who jointly set up an organisation called the British Friends of Israel to express our solidarity with, in particular, Britain's Jewish population, which has been living with a heightened sense of fear about their personal safety since October 7th, seeing these massive demonstrations taking place in all our major cities at that stage every weekend. She and I had asked the police while we were standing beside Churchill statue on Remembrance Sunday last year. She and I had asked the police if they would pose for a photograph with us, holding up one of our banners saying British Friends of Israel. And the police said, "Oh no, we can't do that. That would be too political, and we don't get involved in making political statements." Meanwhile, you virtually see their rainbow lanyard sticking out of their back pockets. So when Allison then saw a picture of what looked like a group of police officers posing with some pro-Palestinian protesters, she was pointing out that this was a double standard. Yes. Why are you posing with these these protesters. You wouldn't pose with us. In fact, she was mistaken. It was a picture from 2 years ago of a group of police officers in Greater Manchester standing with some representatives of, I think, Imran Khan's political party in Pakistan. And when that was pointed out to her, she deleted it. I think one of the reasons the police took this so seriously, and it went round the houses. It was initially investigated by the Met, and then it went to Sussex, where I imagine because the complainant was from Sussex, eventually found its way to Essex because Alison lives in Essex. I wouldn't be surprised if the complaint itself was more than a year old, Julia, and it's just taken the police a year.
I could believe that, but
to actually follow it up. It was the police designated it a gold command investigation, which is usually something reserved for the most serious crimes. For instance, people suspected of terrorist offences.
Yeah. It's a tweet. It's a deleted tweet from a middle-aged woman. But this is the bizarre thing. But yet, we go back to Southport riots. I mean, and we had, numerous people, our good friend Bernie Spoffels and others facing arrest, kept in a prison cell 36 hours, thinking she was facing a couple of years behind bars and then being accused of inciting riots, which she absolutely did not do. And yet, Nick Lowles from Hope Not Hate, he wrote a tweet which was widely acknowledged even by him as being disinformation, claiming there'd been acid attacks on Muslim women, and that was bound to, massive, a completely false claim, absolutely bound to incite tensions at the time, from Muslim communities, people against some of the white demonstrators. No prosecution as far as we're aware, no action as far as we're aware. He's left that tweet up. Absolutely. There's no doubt at all. The rules are different for different people, aren't there?
But they certainly are. It's two-tier policing all the way down. One thing that may have been overlooked in this story is that there is a double standard when it comes to recording non-crime hate incidents. Yeah. Probably the best example I can think of. You remember there was a group of 14-year-old boys who got into trouble because one of them lost a bet, and his forfeit was having to bring a copy of the Quran into school. It got a little bit scuffed in the school playground, and the boys were immediately targeted by extremists in the local Muslim community. They received death threats. It was really, really horrible. And the police, instead of investigating the death threats, investigated what these boys had done and recorded that as a non-crime hate incident.
And took the mother to a meeting with a local imam and other local, supposedly self-appointed community leaders, where she had to she covered her head and sort of, grovelled, basically, please don't kill me and my family. That was basically what she did. And the police chief sat there benignly and oversaw that. Now, that tells us something, doesn't it?
It does indeed. And here's another example of two-tier recording of non-crime hate incidents. So a former Conservative Home Secretary, Amber Rudd, has an NCHI recorded against her for saying British jobs should go to British workers at the Conservative Party conference in 2013. The complainant there was a white male Oxford professor.
Who wasn't even there. Didn't even see the speech, just read a report about it.
Saw it on telly. Last year, the Free Speech Union swung into action to get an NCHI removed from the record of Rachel McLean MP, who was then the vice chairman of the Conservative Party. She's no longer an MP, but we did manage to get that removed. That was for misgendering a local candidate who was a man who believed he was a woman.
So correctly gendering, then?
In other words, correctly gendering them. And then the third example, Murdo Fraser, who until recently was the deputy leader of the Scottish Conservatives, he had an NCHI recorded against him when he said that he didn't think the police should be investigating people for not using the correct pronouns of children who identified as cats. God, it was quite incredible. The police really have had a sense of human bypass, I think, when it comes to these things.
Meanwhile, no rapes or burglaries or car thefts have taken place at all. It is mind-blowing. Can I point out, though, and I must say, because I'm a member of your union, I'm such a big fan of your work on this, these are some high-profile cases. Most cases aren't high-profile. Most cases actually involve ordinary people doing very, ordinary jobs who are having their livelihoods threatened and their freedoms threatened because they have so-called committed these hate crimes or non-crime hate incidents, depending on which it is. And this is a really serious business.
It is really serious. We calculate that 250,000 NCHIs have been recorded in England and Wales alone since the concept was introduced in 2014. Yeah. That's an average of more than 65 a day. You know, you wonder why, if your house gets burgled, you know, and you call the police, they take very little interest, give you a crime reference number.
Well, they're all round Allison's asking her to put the kettle on. But there we are. Toby, we'll have to leave it there. Do come on again very soon. Toby Young, Director of the Free Speech Union.